This next guy is a guy I've known for a long time, wrote a great piece earlier in the week. It is his opinion on what is going on in the state. And again, one of the things we have to do is critique what our government is doing right now, not critique the personalities and all that and get into all that personal destruction stuff, but get into the critique of what they are doing. That's so important. Lowman Henry does that. He's the chairman and chief executive officer of the Lincoln Institute of Public Opinion Research, which is a nonprofit public affairs foundation based in Harrisburg. And he wrote the article called Now We Know What Works and What Does Not, and we're joined this morning by Lowman Henry. Good morning, Lowman. How are you?
I'm well, Gary. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing very well. Good to have you on, but I want to get right to the article because I thought it was a really well-written article, very thoughtful, and gave us a lot to think about this morning. Not to say something very redundant there, but that's exactly what it is. And you talk about the things that we got right in state government so far and maybe the things that we haven't gotten right. So take us through your article a little bit and give us a summary if you can.
Thank you, Gary. It's like any situation, some things work and some things don't. And as you said in your introduction, we're not really interested in the personalities. We're interested in what sort of policies and approaches work here. And what hasn't worked and has sowed a lot of confusion and disrupted supply chains is this whole idea of having a list that delineates what businesses are life-sustaining or essential or non-life-sustaining and not essential. So what you basically had was folks working in government deciding which businesses can stay open and which ones cannot. Now, this might sound on the face of it to some folks like a good idea because the governor has ordered all businesses to shut down except for those exempt. Unfortunately, the way the list was put together, it was more of an eeny, meeny, miny, mo type of thing than any real thought process going into it. And we saw, particularly in the manufacturing sector, that critical supply chains were interrupted. For example, on the list, there's a company in southeastern Pennsylvania that makes wood pallets, the things that everything gets stacked on
Sure.
to deliver. They were deemed to be non-life sustaining. However, the company that produces Clorox, which is a product that's in great demand these days, must have those pallets in order to ship Clorox. So
Exactly.
When you say that the pallet company is non-life sustaining, you prevent the life sustaining company from being able to do its job. And so as a result, this list has sowed confusion. It's disrupted supply chains at a time when manufacturers need to be nimble. So trying to micromanage the economy, not working. On the other hand, the Pennsylvania Department of State has done an excellent job. And by the way, it oversees licensure, among other things, also oversees voting, et cetera, but it oversees professional licensure. And they have done a great job in removing barriers to healthcare providers. For example, they loosened or eliminated regulations that now allow more telemedicine to take place. And with people being required to stay in their homes, telemedicine is even more essential. And by the state loosening those regulations, they're making this method of healthcare delivery possible. And they also remove barriers to having, for example, retired nurses or doctors come back into the healthcare system by not requiring them to do things, for example, like getting continuing educational credits, waiving that so that we can get retired healthcare providers back into the system. So we've seen removing regulations and removing barriers work, adding regulations and barriers not work.
You mentioned a part in your article, too, as far as disrupting the supply chains. You mentioned about a company that manufactures carbon batteries that was ordered to close, even though those batteries are really essential to the function of a lot of medical equipment needed to provide care to hospitalized patients. Talk about that one a little bit.
Well, yes, and that was a particularly crucial example. This company located in Berks County makes these batteries, and they're used in all sorts of medical devices, ventilators among them. And obviously, right now there's a great need. We have companies such as Ford and others who are retooling their assembly lines in order to produce these ventilators and other essential equipment that we must have to fight this horrible pandemic. But you take the batteries out of them, and now if the power goes off, the ventilators don't work. So this is what I mean by critical parts of the supply chain. Now, they did get a waiver, but that process has also been cumbersome. And we have seen some cases where, for example, one company that produces a particular product is given a waiver, but another company that produces the same product is not given a waiver. So you have inconsistencies here, and even worse, the administration has been non-transparent, and there's no list. There's no public list. You can't go to a website and see what companies have been granted waivers and what companies have not. So particularly with a company that produces the batteries, that was essential. There's another company down in Chester County that produces various auto parts that was ordered shut down, and they're a major supplier of auto parts to the United States Postal Service. Well, clearly, we want the USPS to continue to be able to deliver our mail. So they had to get a waiver. But they were shut down for a number of days in the process. And right now, manufacturing must be nimble and be able to convert and produce the products that we need to get over what's obviously coming in the next couple of weeks.
Obviously, we heard something from UPMC yesterday that they've been working on a solution to this since January. But normally the testing process takes over a year. Again, we're going to get back to regulations here, not just Pennsylvania, but federal, where we're going to have to maybe change some of our thinking, maybe change the paradigm in the long run. And that's where we're pretty good at adapting as a culture normally. But again, it seems like many times when government gets in, they get very reactive, but they don't really look at the whole process by which things are produced and all the various supply chains that you really spend a lot of time talking about in your article. Final thoughts on that, Lowman?
Well, and you mentioned the federal government. Another area is the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, and the FDA, the Federal Drug Administration. Both have very cumbersome regulatory processes for producing, among other things, the masks that are in short supply. And it's these regulations that have driven the short supply. And the fact that it can take 60 to 90 days or longer to get federal inspectors out in order to inspect facilities that are manufacturing these masks. And this is where, obviously, regulations are put there for our protection, but they're getting in the way. And when they get in the way, especially in an emergency, they need to be relaxed. Hopefully, relative to the vaccine being developed in Pittsburgh, the federal government can, to the degree that it's safe, relax those regulations and allow that vaccine to be developed much more. We don't have a year to a year and a half to wait.
Right. Lowman, always good talking to you, my friend. I really appreciate the article. We put it up on our website today so people can check it, or not our website, but our Facebook page, facebook.com/910WSBA. I hope people will comment on that and look at it. Well thought out, well written. Thank you for taking the time this morning to summarize it for us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Gary. You stay safe.
You too. Stay safe, my friend.